Marketing's always been a part of Phoenix from the very beginning. I have a marketing background, so I was trying to think of what can I do to really get this off the ground and going. I think it's something that has always been on my mind and still is to this day. I sought advice from one of the individuals who work on Hidden Frontier, Hidden Frontier, and he had told me that create a website with content, and make it real content, and start passing out the word, because that will tell people that you're very serious about what you're doing. And he was right. I created a website. It was very novice, but it worked, and so it allowed me to input a lot of the story into what I was creating, the characters, what the future was going to be about at the time, and get it out there. That's really how Phoenix really started getting the word out. And I think that's the very first thing we launched was a website. Then came the podcasts. My friend Jen and I and our mutual friend Andrea, also known as Andy, sat in her apartment and started recording these podcasts. No experience, never done it before, and we just started talking about the series. We did something fun and started broadcasting, and that really was another medium that got the word out that we're now talking about it. We're not just showing something, we're now talking about it. So, and what happens after that is we start showing results. And so that's kind of how the two came about within, April all of 2008 was about the website, premiered April 30th, and then May was the podcasts. And then towards the end of May, started producing our volunteers. First it was, I believe it was Jan Johnson that came on board as the costume designer, who later became co-exec producer of the series. And then also our props master, also known as our toy maker, Chris Collins-Lubin. He came on board about that time. And that's when really people started coming on board. And June was kind of a transition month for us, because we started getting a lot of inquiries about the production and where people could fit in and where they could volunteer. So that's why in July, all of our volunteering numbers doubled. And so we had 30 people at the time. That's how it really was growing. And then there was the consideration of when should we do casting. With this slated to come out in January of 2009, we need to get this going, and so I pushed for casting a month early. And so in August 16th and 17th of 2008, that's when we did 2 days of casting, and we had a huge response. And I believe there was over 100 people that were waiting to meet with us and learn more about the series, and we're not just, as James Lyle thought, was two guys in a basement with cardboard sets and a little mini camera. One of the challenges for creating the series was, how do you create a starship? And we had already contacted a 3D modeler back in December when we were working on the Enterprise J concept, and Daniel was the guy who had already started working on a model for Enterprise J, but basically switched gears and started thinking about the Phoenix. How do you create a starship that appears 42 years into the future? Well, we've already had two relative ships that appear farther beyond that, for some reference sake. One being the Enterprise J in the 26th century, the other being the time ship Relativity that took place in the 29th century. But it was a little too far-fetched for both. And how do we take something that's in the late years of TNG and progress it far enough to where it looks somewhat futuristic, but not too far advanced? Because honestly, the progression of Star Trek, according to canon, is somewhat slow. There really are no huge jumps that you would see. Even the Enterprise J, even though it was more than 120 years into the future, still had pieces of it that look very close to Star Trek The Next Generation. So that's how we began the Phoenix and the model itself. And honestly, it's gone through 5 different designs. A lot of people haven't seen the first 3 incarnations. A lot more people have seen versions 4 and 5, 5 being the final one that's being used in the pilot and also shown on various pictures and so forth. So it's taken a long time to achieve the look that we're looking for, and we have another design that was submitted to us by Andrew Probert, who worked on the motion picture for Roddenberry and also for Star Trek The Next Generation, and it really is a jump into the future. And if Phoenix goes forward as a series, I can really see it being a new type of ship that we can introduce. But it was more about the time frame of creating the Phoenix itself, and the current modeler for this version of the Phoenix was Mark Kingsnorth out of the UK, and I believe it took him about 6 months to create this version, which is film quality due to the level of detail that we needed it to be in order to do close-up shots, because the previous incarnations just weren't detailed enough for that. They were created at the time for the type of series that we wanted, but as the professionalism of this series progressed forward, we needed a more detailed, intricate model to use for the camera, so that's what we have for today. You know, casting is really tough because you're trying to understand the translation from a production company or an ad agency. They have a specific look in mind, and they give you specs on each individual character or actor, whatever that you're casting for, whether it be a commercial, an indie film, or a feature film, and you're trying to find the match. You're trying to find the best person that would fit the role, and it's tough because you first of all have to go by gender. You have to go by height, weight, looks, hair color. Eye color doesn't always matter depending on the product, but you really do have to hone in on what they're really looking for, and then you hope that once you've found the physical, that the acting ability matches. It doesn't always. I've been fortunate to usually find it here in Seattle, because we have such a vast array of actors in this town, and even a lot of people have moved up from LA that are now here, so I have that pool to access. But casting period, I've casted since I've cast Phoenix for a few other projects, and honestly, it's tough. It's a very tough job. It's a very fun job because you get to meet a lot of people in town. But to find, what an agency or, again, production company wants is really a challenge. For me personally, it was a double whammy, because I had not only the challenge of trying to meet the requirements that I had set forth, and also Jan had set forth, that are the characters that we co-created and looked for, but also this is personal to me because it's my project. So I really had to find the right people, and I knew it probably wouldn't happen right with casting. It may happen down the road, which is actually the case to where we've come as we have new characters. So once the casting process was complete, we already had a script, the basic script of Redivivus, which was the original pilot. It was to be a feature film, and we decided to do a roundtable reading. So for those that are not familiar with the film world, that basically means we bring in all the actors, even supporting, sit around a huge table and actually read through the pilot as if they're acting it, to get kind of a feel for the actors reading the part, how it will sound. It gives the writers a huge opportunity to really think about any of the changes that may work better for the script. After we did that, Jan and I really got a good feel of what this was going to look like, at least as best as we could. And a couple of the principal cast actors, mainly Ben Andrews and Amanda Cherry, got together with us, and we really sat down and said, okay, this was intended to be a green screen production. It was something to teach us how to do it. How do you key, how do you mask out people's hair, that kind of thing. Lighting, which is essential when doing green screen. And, neither one of us had the experience to do it, so we were looking forward to it. It's something that we knew was up and coming. We knew that green screen is being used in Hollywood feature films. I mean, the television series Sanctuary, that's on Sci-Fi, is filmed, I think, 90% in front of a green screen. So we knew it was, it was a very interesting concept to do, and other fan productions have been doing it. But they came to us and said, what if we were to reconsider that element? what if we were to take this another step forward and build actual sets for the production? You know, build a real bridge, build all the sets you need to do the series. And it sounded like a fantastic idea. And the first question that comes to mind, of course, being executive producers, was how do you pay for it? And so we just decided that we would take a leap of faith and follow what we thought would be an interesting endeavor and go for it. So that's how the decision was made to go from green screens to full sets. It really wasn't about the technicalities of a green screen or, you know, the ability to do it or not to do it. It really was, let's make it a step higher for ourselves and raise the bar in Seattle even more by presenting a, you know, TV series per se that is filmed entirely in Seattle, but not just green screen, full sets. So that's kind of how that came about. A lot of people want to know why we don't do it and why we still don't do it, and that's basically the reason why. We've already set our own precedent, and it's kind of hard to go backwards when what we're trying to do is always move forward.